She said it wasn't about him, that it just happened. But I'd seen the emails. I'd read the messages she sent on my behalf, pretending to be me, the recommendations, the networking favors, the lies written in my tone, signed with my name. She didn't just cheat. She hijacked my reputation to do it. And when the fallout came, she expected me to hold the umbrella. I handed her the storm instead. She didn't have to lie. Not at first. She had the job, the skills, the connections. She was already being noticed, promoted, quoted, asked to speak at panels. I used to admire that about her. The way she moved in a room, the way people leaned in when she talked, how she carried confidence like a second skin. I never felt threatened by it. Not until I learned how far she was willing to go to keep it. We met through work, not in the same company, but in the same circle. I was in systems architecture. She was in business development. I ran projects. She pitched them. We bumped into each other at a tech leadership event years ago, and I remember thinking she talked like someone who already knew the outcome. That confidence, that polish. It pulled you in before you had time to decide whether you liked her or not. And for a while, I did. I liked her a lot. She always said I grounded her, that she needed my calm, that she felt safe with me. I held on to that for too long because it took me a while to understand that people who always need to feel safe often become the most dangerous ones when they think they're not getting what they want. In the beginning, everything made sense. She celebrated my wins louder than her own. She bragged about me at dinners. She introduced me like I was the better half, even though she was the one who always walked into rooms like she owned them. I thought we were a good balance. I was wrong. The first crack didn't come from anything obvious. It was a presentation, one I helped her build late into the night for a major partnership pitch. She landed it, got the spotlight, and in the team debrief a week later, someone from her side emailed me to say, "Appreciate the slides. Didn't realize you worked on that too." Didn't realize, because she hadn't said anything. No credit, no mention. Not even a "we worked on it." She told me later she'd meant to. That it slipped her mind, that she was just trying not to overcomplicate the narrative. And I believed her, because love teaches you to give benefit of the doubt, even when the doubt is stacking up. The second time, it was a LinkedIn post. She wrote about building cross-sector strategies, named 3 people as key collaborators. I was one of them, but not by name. Just a systems consultant I deeply trust. A systems consultant. I was her husband, and I had spent 2 weeks helping her rehearse that pitch until midnight. I asked her about it. She said, "I didn't want people thinking you got me in the door." I let that sit because I didn't know how to tell her she was already walking out. I didn't say anything for a while after that. I told myself it was ego, that maybe I was just being sensitive. She was navigating a world I didn't understand, where appearances mattered, where every connection had to be spun into leverage. I convinced myself not taking credit was part of loving someone in that world. But it wasn't about credit. It was about erasure. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't part of the story she was telling. Not publicly, not professionally, and slowly, not even privately. The third time I didn't need to ask, because I saw it for what it was. We were at a networking dinner. She was sitting next to a senior executive, someone she'd mentioned before, someone she'd spoken of too carefully. He leaned in too closely when he talked. She laughed too quickly when he did. And when she introduced me, finally formally, she didn't say "my husband." She said, "This is R. He's in systems. Brilliant guy." The executive shook my hand, gave me that faint, dismissive nod men give when they're sizing you up but already don't care who you are. I wasn't competition. I was background. I sat at that table for the next hour, listening to a conversation I couldn't participate in. About deals I didn't know she was chasing, clients I'd never heard her mention, decisions she hadn't told me she was making. And it wasn't because she forgot. It was because she didn't think she had to. Later that night, I asked her again, "Why'd you leave out the husband part?" She didn't miss a beat. "You're so much more than just my husband. I wanted them to take you seriously." I just nodded. Because what do you say to someone who sells your identity as a favor? She got the promotion 2 months later, and the travel started. Then the after-hours calls, then the late nights that ran long, and the weekends where they needed her input. I didn't check her phone. I didn't follow her. I didn't do the things people in movies do when they're suspicious. I just watched her keep smiling like she still lived in the same house with me, even though I hadn't felt her presence in weeks. Watched her come home like a guest in a hotel she used to own. I told myself it was temporary, that people grow and growth gets messy, that maybe I was just in my own head, until one day the mess opened its mouth and said my name. But it wasn't me speaking. It started with an email sent to my work inbox. The subject line was just, "Thought you should know." No name, no greeting, just 4 forwarded messages. At first glance, they looked like internal meeting notes, discussion threads, scheduling, follow-ups, except they weren't from me. They were from her, written in my voice, my tone, my name at the bottom of each one, and she'd signed them off using my exact signature block, down to the personal quote I always used, "Quiet decisions build loud empires." That's when my mouth went dry, because I never gave her access to my professional email, and those messages weren't copied to me. She'd used a spoof, a nearly identical version of my old freelance account that had long been inactive. She'd resurrected it to speak as me. The messages were sent to the same executive from that dinner, the one she'd downplayed, the one who shook my hand like I wasn't part of the conversation. And the things she said as me, recommendations, praise, requests, introductions, she was vouching for herself and using me to do it. Literally, she told him how deeply respected she was by industry peers. She signed off one message with, "I'd trust her with my clients before I'd trust most partners," and he replied, cordially, gratefully, with an invitation to meet again, one-on-one, less formal. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I didn't believe it, but because I didn't want to believe I'd missed it this long. This wasn't just cheating. This was calculated. She wasn't just hiding an affair. She'd weaponized my identity to feed it. I didn't call her, didn't yell, didn't demand answers. I forwarded the emails to myself, printed them, filed them, because now it wasn't just personal. It was reputational. She didn't just lie. She impersonated me, and she thought I'd never find out. That was the night I stopped calling it something we needed to work on and started calling it what it was, a betrayal of trust, of love, of name. She got home late that night. Her heels clicked across the tile the same way they always did, except this time it didn't sound like coming home. It sounded like footsteps in someone else's house. She didn't even look tired, just a bit too pleased with herself. "Long day," she said, without being asked. I nodded. "Anything interesting?" "Nothing worth repeating," she said, shrugging out of her coat. She didn't know I already knew everything she wouldn't tell me, didn't know I'd seen what she'd done, what she'd written, who she'd become when she thought I wasn't watching. I waited, not for an apology. That would have meant she admitted something. I waited for the moment her lie would catch up to her mouth, for the pause, the hesitation, but it didn't come. She moved through the night like someone who had cleaned up every trace of what she'd done. She hadn't. She just forgot the one thing liars always forget. You can fake anything, except your own fingerprints. That night, after she fell asleep, I pulled out the printouts, sat at the kitchen counter and read every line again. My name, over and over, attached to things I never said. Emails that sounded exactly like me because she knew my voice that well. And that's what cut the deepest. Not that she lied, not even that she cheated, but that she'd studied me carefully enough to replicate me, then used that imitation to make herself more desirable to someone else. I didn't sleep, and for the first time in years, I didn't miss her next to me. I didn't even look at her. I just looked forward, because from that point on, there was only one thing left to do. The fallout didn't come with shouting. It came with a phone call from a client, one I hadn't spoken to directly in almost a year. "Hey, just wanted to confirm you're still endorsing that partnership through Kessler?" Kessler, her division. I paused. "What partnership?" "The one you vouched for back in February. We've got your message here, made a few decisions based on it. Everything still good on your end?" I didn't respond right away because I had no memory of that email, no agreement, no conversation, but I already knew where it came from. After I hung up, I pulled up the file she'd sent using the spoofed address. The wording was identical. She'd spoken for me again, on company business, and now the client thought I was the source. This wasn't just unethical, this was professional liability, and if anything went wrong on that deal, I would be the one holding the matchstick. That's when it changed. When it stopped being about love, stopped being about cheating or marriage or trust, it became about survival. Because the person sleeping in my house wasn't just betraying me emotionally, she was eroding the ground I stood on, and I'd built that ground myself. No shortcuts, no handouts, no favors. I couldn't afford her lies to outlive our marriage. She came home that night like nothing had happened, like she wasn't dragging my name behind her like a trophy. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I called a lawyer. The lawyer was clear. She's impersonated you in a professional setting. That's forgery if you want to press it. I didn't, not yet. I wasn't interested in burning everything down. I just didn't want to be the one buried under it when the fire started. Can we make sure I'm legally protected if this unravels? I asked. He said yes, if we moved quickly. So we did. I started gathering. Not snooping, not invading. Just collecting what she'd already left in plain sight. Her old laptop, the one she forgot, was still synced to our shared drive. I found drafts, edits, notes where she rehearsed my voice like an actor studying for a role. Use softer tone here. He wouldn't be aggressive. Make it sound like you're reluctantly impressed. She didn't just use me. She studied me, mimicked me, marketed me, until I became nothing but a tool in the back of her professional shed, used when needed, tucked away when inconvenient. I didn't get angry, didn't rage. I got strategic, because you don't win against someone like that by screaming. You win by taking away the stage before they realize the audience is gone. I called the client back, the one who had asked about the email. I told him, plainly and calmly, I didn't send that, and I'm formally rescinding any implied endorsement. Anything moving forward is on her name, not mine. He paused. You serious? I am. He didn't ask for details, but he understood. That was the first thread I pulled, and everything started to unravel after that. 2 days later, she got an email she didn't expect. I only know because she read it out loud, muttered it under her breath in the kitchen. They're pulling the plug? Her tone wasn't confusion. It was insult. Like she couldn't believe anyone would dare walk away from her. She stormed into the living room, phone in hand, dialing fast. David, what the hell is this? You said we were locked in? No, don't give me that. You got the green light from... She froze. Eyes cut to me, sitting on the couch. I didn't flinch, because I knew what she was realizing in that moment. Her deals only worked when I stayed silent, when I kept being the man in the background holding up the version of her she sold. Without that, the illusion cracked. And when illusions crack, people don't just lose deals, they lose protection. She hung up the call, stared at me like I'd just broken something sacred. Did you talk to them? I nodded once. No explanation. Why? Because it wasn't true. She scoffed. You think you're some hero now? No, I just stopped letting you wear my skin. She didn't respond. She just stood there, caught somewhere between rage and panic. Because people like her don't know what to do when the quiet man finally speaks, especially when he doesn't raise his voice. That night, she didn't come to bed. I didn't check where she went, didn't care, because I wasn't protecting the marriage anymore. I was protecting my name. She came home the next morning just after 7. No apology, no explanation, just the sound of keys hitting the counter and shoes coming off too slowly. I didn't ask where she'd been, because I didn't need to. You can only pretend not to see for so long before the pretending starts to rot you from the inside. She stood in the doorway of the kitchen like she expected me to start the fight, but I wasn't fighting. I was documenting. Quietly. Carefully. Precisely. A few days later, I had everything I needed. Emails, drafts, client communications, screenshots, 2 different calendar entries with my initials used for calls I didn't attend. And then there was the photo. It came from someone I hadn't spoken to in a while, an old contact from an industry mixer who'd seen her out one night, sitting across from the same executive, his hand on hers, no ambiguity. He sent it to me with 3 words, didn't feel right. And I didn't feel surprised. Just validated. I printed it all, bound it, labeled it, not for court, not for blackmail, not even to expose her. I did it so that if anyone ever asked me what happened, I'd never have to rely on memory. I could just hand them the truth. That night, I left the file on the table, Didn't say anything, didn't wait around. I packed one bag, took my keys, and walked out the front door of a life that had stopped being mine a long time ago. She didn't call the first night I left. Not a text, not a missed call, nothing. That told me more than a screaming match ever could. She wasn't shocked, she wasn't worried. She was calculating, waiting to see how loud I'd be about it, how public, how destructive. Because people like her don't think in terms of right and wrong. They think in optics, in exposure, in what can still be controlled. The next morning, I went to a friend's place, a guest room with nothing but a mattress, a lamp, and a folding chair. And for the first time in months, I slept 8 hours. No interruptions, no side glances, no wait in the room pretending not to be guilt. Just quiet. The honest kind. She messaged me 2 days later. You left the house? Are you okay? No apology, no admission. Just that careful wording people use when they still hope they're the victim in the story. I didn't reply because if you need me to explain why I left, you don't deserve to hear me say it. I called the lawyer again, told him I was ready to file. He asked one question. Do you want to cite anything official? I paused. No, just irreconcilable differences. Because I didn't need to take her down. I just needed to get free. She tried calling 3 days after the papers were served. I didn't pick up. She followed it with a message. Can we talk? This isn't how I wanted things to end. The irony wasn't lost on me because nothing she did ever felt like she wanted it to end. She just wanted to do what she wanted and still be chosen. She wanted the freedom and the fallback. She just didn't expect me to be the one who stopped playing the part. She sent another message that night. You know I never meant to hurt you. That one made me stop. Not because it felt sincere, but because it was so clearly not. People always say that after the damage is done, like if the pain wasn't intentional, it shouldn't count. But it does. Intent doesn't erase impact, and she never asked what hurt, just defended herself against the idea that she meant it. A week passed, then a voicemail. I think we should at least talk before lawyers get involved. Too late. They were already involved. And I wasn't going to sit across from someone who had spent the last year rewriting me with a smile on her face. I returned to the house once. Not to talk, just to gather the rest of my things. She wasn't there. I walked through the rooms like a stranger. It smelled like a hotel. Cold, faintly floral, everything spotless and hollow. In the closet, half her wardrobe was missing. The drawers had been rearranged. She was preparing for a life without me. She just hadn't expected me to agree to it first. On the nightstand, I found something unexpected, a framed photo, the two of us, from years ago, at a holiday party, laughing at something off camera. Tucked behind it, folded and yellowed, was a post-it I'd written back then, in every room, I'll choose you. I took it, not to keep, to remind myself what I meant back then and what she gave up the moment she stopped choosing me back. The divorce moved fast. Too fast for her, I think, because control is hard to maintain when the other person refuses to argue. She replied to the initial petition through her lawyer. No contest, no counterclaim, just an asterisk in the response. He seems to have made up his mind. She wasn't wrong. I didn't ask for alimony, didn't take the house, didn't freeze her accounts. People asked why I went so easy on her. I didn't. I just knew that losing me wasn't about money. It was about the audience. And when I walked away without a scene, she had no story to spin, just silence. And silence, for people like her, is the one punishment that sticks. I saw her once, weeks before the final hearing, by accident. She was walking out of a restaurant, alone, phone in hand, face tilted down, but her posture still straight, still polished, still playing the part. She didn't see me, and I didn't call out. I just watched for a second, not out of curiosity, but confirmation, that I no longer lived in that world, that she was still acting, and I was no longer in the script. The court date was uneventful. No witnesses, no statements, just papers. Signatures. Two people sitting on opposite sides of a room that once held everything they thought was permanent. She didn't look at me. I didn't look for her. The judge moved quickly, called our names, confirmed the terms, asked if either of us had anything to say. She didn't speak. Neither did I. Because when you've already said goodbye without words, there's no need to give a performance for strangers. Afterward, I walked out into the cold. The air smelled cleaner than it had in months. Maybe it was the season. Maybe it was just finally being out from under her version of me. I got into the car and drove nowhere in particular. No destination, just distance. And that felt like the first real step forward. That night, I slept with the windows open, let the cold settle into the corners of the room, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't dream about fixing anything. It wasn't vengeance I was after, just closure. I wasn't checking her socials, wasn't asking mutuals how she was doing. I'd burned those bridges the moment I stopped letting her borrow my silence. But the world has a way of circling back, and sometimes it doesn't knock. It just leaves the fallout at your doorstep. It started with an email from a recruiter I hadn't spoken to in years. Subject, is this your work? Attached was a proposal, one I'd helped write years ago for a client I never officially worked with. It had been part of a trial partnership that didn't go anywhere back when she and I were still us. Except this version had her name on it, all of it. The formatting was mine, the language was mine, but the byline was hers. I wrote back, no, that's not hers. No drama, no accusations, just the facts. He thanked me, didn't say anything more, but that was the first time I realized she hadn't stopped using what wasn't hers. Even after I walked away. Another email came 2 weeks later, different name, same pattern. She was still moving in rooms built on the version of me she'd practiced, even after the real one had left the stage. It wasn't criminal, but it was a pattern, and patterns have a way of catching up. I didn't report her, didn't need to. People noticed. She was using the same voice too many times in too many places, and eventually someone compared notes. That's how it always happens. Not with explosions, with inconsistencies. And the one thing she'd never prepared for was having to explain the version of herself that didn't exist without me. I got a call 6 weeks later. Unknown number, corporate prefix. I let it go to voicemail. Later I listened. This is internal affairs at Kessler. We'd appreciate a callback regarding a series of submissions made under your name over the last 18 months. There it was. Not vindication. Just confirmation. She'd gone too far. She hadn't just borrowed my words, she'd built policy with them, filed pitches, back-channeled deals, leveraged my tone and my trust to climb. And when I stopped being quiet, the stairs under her feet started cracking. I called back, spoke carefully, gave dates, gave timelines, didn't accuse, just clarified. They were polite, professional. They didn't say much, but I didn't need them to, because the point wasn't justice. The point was clarity. That she'd taken something that wasn't hers, and she no longer had access to it. A few months later, a colleague forwarded me something, an internal memo. Her name wasn't listed, but the language was clear. An undisclosed professional misrepresentation had led to a retraction of contracts and a shift in public-facing leadership. She was gone, quietly, without statement, without celebration. That's how real consequences land sometimes. Not with a scandal, with absence. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post cryptic quotes, didn't tell anyone I told you so. I just went to work, made coffee, rebuilt, because she took my name. But I kept my character. And when the dust settles, that's all that matters. People ask sometimes, quietly, gently, if I still talk to her. I don't. Not out of bitterness, just completion. When a door is closed, you don't keep checking the handle. You walk away. You build somewhere new. I haven't seen her in over a year. No updates, no gossip. She became someone I used to know. The kind of story you only tell when someone asks where the scars came from, not with anger, just honesty. I started dating again, slowly, quietly. And when I told the new woman my story, she didn't flinch, didn't try to fix it, didn't tell me not all women. She just said, you didn't deserve that. And that was enough. Because sometimes healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about being believed. I kept the old notebooks, the ones I used to track what she did, not out of obsession, out of proof, not for anyone else, for me. Because when you go through something like that, the hardest part isn't surviving it. It's believing yourself when someone else worked so hard to convince you it wasn't real. But I remember everything now, and I carry none of it with shame. Because she built a career on a lie, and I didn't burn it down, I just stopped holding it up. Thanks for watching, like, share, and let's hear what you think. Until next time, take care.